Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for attending this last webinar of the year. So I think I've done about 36 so far. So I think this is number 37. Okay, let's make a start. So today I'm going to be reviewing some of my articles, 3 of them from the year, and we'll go through and go into a little bit more depth, and you can ask questions as we're going through as well, so we can cover those. And if I can't answer the questions, I will follow up via email. So we'll be reviewing the articles from this year. This year marked 20 years of my articles in the magazine. So it started back in 2002, which is amazing. So that was even before Excel 2003, which was sort of a very popular version. And of course, now we've got the subscription version of Excel. So today we're going to look at some days and date calculations. Now I have put a little index here, so you can go to these sheets directly using this little index section. Quite a few different sheets. These sort of marry into the figures that I used in the article for March. And that's where, so you can go directly to these. If you want to come back, I'll show you this. So let's say we want to go to this transition sheet and we want to go back to where we were. What you can do is press the F5 key and then press the enter key. So you press them separately. So you press F5 and you press enter. So that's how you go back after you follow a hyperlink. So that's a useful shortcut to know. So days and dates, that's the March article. We're going to go look at how we can do calculation using days and dates. We'll also look at how we can add a vertical line to a line chart, and then we'll finish off with how we can do an interest-free calculation and then how we can automate it. So that's what we're going to look at today. So let's go back in time to March 22, and we're going to look at some date calculations using the eDate function. So the formula is in column C here, but you can actually see the formula in column D. So Excel has a function called formula text. It's really good for documentation, and you can actually see the formula that's in the cell. So we can see the result and we can also see the formula at the same time. So before we dive into these calculations, let me just show you something. So here's a shortcut that you might like. It puts today's date into a cell. It's control and the semicolon. So it's the 8th today, and that is a data entry. So it's not a formula. You can use the today function as well if you like. So today puts the formula, the date in, but it changes, so it updates. So when I open this file tomorrow, that would say the 9th. So the today function is dynamic, whereas when you use control and the semicolon, it just puts in the date for you. Now, what I wanted to show you is behind each date is a number. So if I take the format off these 2 cells, then you can see the underlying number. So 44,903. What that means is that's how many days since the 1st of the 1st, 1900, which was when Excel thinks the universe started. So that's day 1, if you like. And every day since then has been given a sequential number. And it's important to understand that because that's how Excel works. Pretty much. It works with numbers. So a date is a number. And so it's really easy to add days to a date because it's just a numeric add. When it's working with months, which are a little bit more complicated, thanks to our wonderful system where we have 4 different month ends, as in 28, 29, 30, and 31, that things get a little bit more complicated. So if you have, I've got some start dates here in column A, and we want to add a number of months to those. So we want to add 9 months to the date. When you're working with the first of the month, everything always works and it's really, really easy. So I always work with the first of the month if I'm working with a month. Don't use the end of the month because that's so hard to work with because, as I mentioned, we've got different end of months. We'll look at end of month in a minute because there's actually a function that does it. But when you're working with months, let's say in a forecast or a budget, always use the first of the month to reference it because everything is so much easier when you do. Okay, so if we add 9 months to January, we end up in October. And the formula, basically you give it a start date, you tell it how many months to add, and that's it. It does all the work for you. And as you can see, the results here. So when you're working with end of month dates, so the 28th of the 2nd was the end of the month for February. If you add 9 months to that, you're going to end up with the 29th of November. Now, that's not the end of month for November. So when you're working with end of months, we'll have a look at that in a minute. There is another function to use rather than eDate. eDate is really, really good for things like lease dates where you might have 36 months that you want to add to a particular lease date so you can find out when it starts and when it ends, or when it ends after a start date. So eDate's really good for that type of stuff, and it works really well with the first of the month. But when you start getting to the days in the month, that's when you can have some issues. In general, it works okay. Like, so if we take the end of May and add 9 months to it, you'll see you end up with the end of February. Even though February doesn't have 31 days in it, it's smart enough to know that it's not going to give you like the 2nd or the 3rd of March as a result. So basically, if your date is higher than the end of month you're going to, you're good. But if it's lower, as in 28th to 28th, then that's when you have some issues. And that's when you might want to use the EO month function. So end of month. So Excel knows about the end of the month, and it can work out the end of the month for you. And again, you take a date, you tell it how many months to add to that date. If you're after the end of the current month, then you would just have the 0 there. But in this case, we're adding 9 months to it. And so this always returns the end of the month. So you give it a start date, and that date can be any date, the first all the way through to the end of the month, and tell it how many months to add to it, and it will give you the end of that month. So EO month works the same as eDate, but it returns the end of the month that you're working with. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, dates or days are really easy to work with. So you've got, if you just want to add a certain number of days, you can just use your normal arithmetic. You can just go plus. You can also subtract. You can also take days away. So the formula is very easy. You can just add a number of days to a date and it will work seamlessly pretty much. So you can add and subtract to get if you're just adding calendar days, you can do that. If you want to add work days, then there is a function that can do that for you, which we'll look at now. Okay. So let's say we've got a start date here and we want to add 2 days to it. Now, if we go over the weekend, obviously we don't want to work on the weekend. So this formula, the Workday function, will allow you to have a start date and then add a certain number of days to it. Now, those days are working days. Now, in the default setting for Workday, it uses a typical Saturday, Sunday weekend. Now, just a heads up, not every country in the world does that. Not every country has a Saturday, Sunday weekend. And so we'll see how we can handle that a little bit later. But this is the standard Australian and certainly American weekdays and work days. So we have Monday to Friday, and then we have the weekend off. Hopefully you do. And this allows you to take the weekend into account. So when you add Workday, it ignores the weekend. So you don't get any day, it just ignores the weekend for working out how many days to add. So there's a couple of examples there. So, February is a good example because it has like it has 4 weeks in it. There's no holidays in February typically. And so if you add 20, you're going to end up at the end of the month and you can see it's inclusive as well. So it's not pushing it past the end of the month. So there's always pretty much 3 out of 4, 4 weeks in February. And so 20 working days added to the first will give you the 28th at the end of the month. Oh, that's sorry. I'm talking about, I'll get it right. That's January. So I'm not talking about February. Now, there is a holiday in January. So we've got good old Australia Day there. If you want to take into account holidays, public holidays, then you can do that as well. You may have noticed when I was here that there in the square brackets, there's holidays. So when you see the square brackets in the formula description down the bottom here, it means it's optional. Typically, they're always at the end of the function. And if you add it in, so a holidays is a list of days to take into account as a holiday. So they're treated like the weekend. And so in this case, I've included the range H2 and H3. So we've got a couple of holidays in January. So you can see the different result here. So from the 1st, this goes 1st to the 4th. But when, because there's a third of the 1st is a holiday, this pushes it out an extra day. So it's the same formula, but it includes a range of dates to include as public holidays. So you just put the date in there and you just list them, and it basically excludes that date. So that date is treated like the weekend. So it's not picked up. And you can see the same here. This one started on the 1st, and it has pushed it over to the 1st. So there was a couple of days of holidays, and that's also probably pushed it onto a Monday, possibly, because that's an extra 3 days. So there was 2 holidays in January, and depending on when it falls, it might push it over to an extra day for a Monday or something. Okay, so Workday allows you to add work days to a date. So really good if you are doing some sort of project type analysis and you need to figure out, how many work days. If you think it's going to take, say, 10 work days, when is that going to finish, and take into account any public holidays. And this list, by the way, can be as long as you want to exclude. So you might include some other dates in there that you're not working, for example. So you just list the days in there and just refer to it as the last argument in the Workday function. Okay. Similar to that, you might have 2 dates. So you might have been given a deadline. So we've got to do this by the 31st of the 1st. And so you might want to work backwards. So you might want to figure out, well, how many work days do I have if they've given me this deadline and I know what today's date is. And so the net work days allows you to figure out the number of work days between the 2 dates. So this one just has a start and an end date. So you have a start date and an end date. Again, you can take into account holidays, which is what we've got in column E. So in terms of this one, this was telling us how many weekdays there are. So it's ignoring the weekend, but it's going how many Monday through to Friday days are there. So that's telling us 21, 5, and 10. If we take into account these 2 holidays in January, you can see it takes those 2 out. So now there's only 19 days if we exclude holidays. And again, all you do is you refer to a range as the 3rd argument, and that will ignore those days in the calculation. So Again, the list can be as long as you like, and you can put other dates in there, obviously, that you want to exclude from. So maybe you're on holidays for a certain number of period, so you can put all the dates that you're on holidays in there. Okay, so Workdays adds workdays, whereas net workdays gives you the number of days between a start date and an end date. And also you can include the holidays, a holiday list there as well. Okay, let's have a look at a formula. Oh, by the way, we're going to look at the, we're going to take into account other weekends apart from Saturday, Sunday. So as I mentioned, around the world, different places have different weekends, and you can take that into account. There are a couple of functions we're going to look at next, which are called the international functions, INTL, and they're a little bit more flexible. But first, let's see how we can get a end of month date from, a first of the month date. So if you've got a date, so let's say A1, we've got the 15th. If we want to find out the end of the beginning of the next month, what we can do is take that date, we add 0 to it, and add 1, basically. So this gives you the end of the month for May, and then you add 1 to it. Now, if you want to find out the 1st of May, what you can do is do the same calculation. So equals EO month, go -1, and then +1. So that gives you the end of the previous month, and then add 1. So I use this a lot when I am working with the 1st of the month. So I'll convert all of the dates, let's say in a sales listing, because I want to work with the 1st of the month. This can convert all of the dates for May into the 1st of May, which then makes a lot easier to do things like SUMIFS to work out what month it's in. So this one here, subtract 1, add 1. So subtract 1 within the EO month. That gives you the end of the previous month. So in this case, April. And then you add 1 to it, which obviously gives you the 1st of the month, which in this case is the 1st of May. So this one here gives you the 1st of the next month. This one here gives you the 1st of the current month. So it's sort of a little hack you can do with EO month to get the 1st of the month instead of the end of the month. Oh, okay. And here's another sort of on a similar vein. Let's say you wanted the last weekday of and let's say the last working day of the month. What you can do is, so you can take the month, that's the date there. And if you want to find out the last weekday of that month, you can use the end of the month to generate that next month. And then the workday is going to subtract 1 day from it. But we're taking into account holidays as well. So I've given you a holiday list here. So they're the WA holidays for the first few months of the year. And so what this does, and you can see it doesn't really affect these first 3 months. These still end up on the last day of the month. But this one here, you can see it did make a difference. So this one here, the last weekday of the month that's worked is the 29th of the 4th. So that's a little formula. If you do need to work out the last either working day or weekday of the month, you can use sort of a combination of workday and the EO month function to do that. Okay, international. Let's go international. So this is the example of the international functions. So Workday INTL stands for international, and international allows you to take into account different weekends. So let's have a look as we build it. Well, let's build it from scratch. Here we go. So when you start writing Workday, you can see international is there. You can use your arrow keys to move around here, and then I'm going to press the tab key. The beauty with using tab is it puts the opening bracket there for you as well. Okay, so we've got a start, comma, we've got how many days. So at the moment, everything's the same, comma. Now, this is the third argument now, and this one is allowing you to select different weekends. Now, if you used one, it would be exactly the same as the normal Workday function. So you probably wouldn't use that one. But all of the others give you different options. And you'll notice that some of those options are just a day. So some of these are just treating one day as the weekend. So maybe if you're working in a shop and the shop's always open on Saturday, and you want to take that into account and just miss out on Sunday, then you can use 11, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so 11 means miss out the Sunday, or treat Sunday as the weekend. So only missing one day. So all you have is the extra argument to define where you want to use the weekend. So what is the weekend? And you'll notice that the holidays are the last argument there as well. So in this example, I'm referring to those few days as well. So that's the Workday excluding, so this is adding days, excluding a certain weekend that you defined, that you can define with that third argument. It is optional. If you leave it out, it uses the Saturday and Sunday, which again sort of doesn't make sense, or you don't really need to miss it out because you just use the Workday function rather than international. Okay, so Workday, and as well as Workday, we have Net Workday as well. So it's the same calculation that we were doing before. Again, it's .intl, and again, the third argument defines the weekend. It's the same definition as used in the other one. So 11 is missing out Sunday. So Sunday is the weekend. That means you work Saturdays. And also, again, you can include the holidays list there as well for net work days. Oh, there's a comparison of the difference, basically. So they're the same start and the end. And you can see the difference between Network Days International and just the normal Network Day as well. So you can see got that must be 3 Sundays in there probably. As the difference. Oh no, 3 Saturdays. That's right, because this one treats the this one doesn't work Saturdays. This one does work Saturdays. Okay, now something that hardly anyone knows is that the network days, as well as allowing you to identify a specific day, also allows you to use this little setup. Instead of using the number 11, which was a number to define where the weekend is, you can actually use 7 characters, so it's either a 1 or a 0, to define the week. So in this case, this one here, that is, you're not working for the whole week, but you are working on the Sunday. So it goes Monday to Sunday, and you can make up your own work week, if you like. So basically, this is one way to figure out how many Sundays are between 2 dates. So if you have a start date and an end date, this is telling us there's 5 Sundays, and it's probably inclusive. So 5 Sundays in those dates. And then this one counts Fridays. So the 0 is the work day. So when you put a 1, that's the weekend, or treat it as the weekend. And again, this one's a Saturday. So Monday, it goes from Monday to Sunday, the listing. So each character, each number, that represents Monday, Tuesday, all the way down to Sunday. So hardly anyone knows that. That's a well-kept secret when it comes to Excel. You can also use that for the work days calculation. something I was trying to think, why would you use that? And then I had a thought, if you're transitioning to retirement, say, you might only work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you might be on a countdown to when you're going to leave. Now, I must admit, I was going to run this session on the 13th. I changed it to run this week. So this date here, I'm actually going to tweak this now. So I'm going to change that to today's date. And then I'm going to tweak this a little bit to work with. There we go. Got to delete that. There we go. So now it's all working. By the way, I've just used the sequence function here to give me what I wanted to do was to test this to make sure it was working. So I've got every day from now, and if I'm going to retire on the 30th of the 6th, 2025, that don't start any rumors. That was just a calculation. I don't plan to retire then. But this is calculating all of the dates. So this little formula here takes that start date, which is the 8th, and the sequence function gives you a list of numbers. And it's an array, dynamic array. So it actually goes down the page. So there's no formulas in these cells. They're grayed out. If you haven't looked at dynamic arrays, they are very exciting, and I have done some webinars on them. So you can check out my websites for that. Okay, so this goes all the way down. When do I finish? The 30th of the 6th. Let's have a look. There we go, 30th of the 6th. And to refer to that range, so what I've done is I've converted all of those entries in column E to the 3 characters for the day. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so I'm checking now. This is doing a count if on the right-hand side here. It's counting how many Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and that's there, and giving me the total. So I'm just doing a check of that. The actual days is just subtract one from the other. That's there. And so, yeah, so if you are transitioning to retirement and want to know how many days, that's total days, and this is work days left. And if you wanted to, you could include public holidays, but that would be like 4 years out. So I didn't do that. So there you go. So you can, if you wanted to define your own week, and maybe, for example, on a project basis, you only work a few days on a project. And so you want to define those days. And so that part there allows you to basically customize your week. The 0 is the work day. The 1 is the holiday. So there you go. Okay. So that's enough of dates. If you do have any questions, I haven't had any questions come through. You can use the chat screen or Q&A. What we're going to look at now is the way we can create a flexible vertical line. So the theory with this is we've got a couple of months, doing a formula there, a couple of months of actuals, and then the rest is going to be the forecast. And so we want to identify where the actuals and the forecasts switch over, basically. So up to August is actuals, and then forward from there is the forecast. Now, this is dynamic. So if I chuck in a couple of, let's say we put the figures in for actuals, you can see that this chart automatically moves everything up. So let's see how we can do that. We'll move that over there. Okay, the structure is the important part here. So this part's fairly easy. This is just data entry. These 2 columns here do the work. This one here, if B2 is empty, so it's assuming that we can't have a 0 for sales. If it's empty, it means it's not the actual month, it's a forecast month. So very simple formula. If B2 is 0, it shows C2, otherwise B2, and it just copies, and that's been copied down. So as you can see, this is the forecast and that is the actual. So that's really simple, and that's going to drive the blue line over there. This one is a little bit different. So let's have a look here. If the current row is greater than 0, and the next row, so we're looking in column B here, so the actuals, and if B3 is 0, so that means the next month is 0, then that means we're on the last month of the actuals. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to display, if that's the case, if we're on the last month of the actuals, we're going to display the number that's in G1. We'll get to G1 in a minute. It's just a high number that's higher than all of the values there. Otherwise, so if we're not going to show G1, we're going to show NA. Now, believe it or not, Excel has a function called NA that displays the NA error on purpose. Okay, that's all it does. It just displays the NA error. Now, you might be asking, why would you do that? Well, in the charts, if there's an NA, the chart will ignore that cell. So what happens is all of these NAs are going to get ignored except this 130,000. So it's going to plot the 130,000 there for me. Now, where that 130,000 comes from is here. So what I do, I'll start from the middle here. So we get the maximum from D2 to D3. That's what the max function does. And I'm rounding it up, so round up to 4 decimal places to the left. So this is 10,000 basically. So if you use a positive number here, it's decimal places. If you use a minus number here on a round up, it goes to the left of the decimal point. So it goes tens, hundreds, thousands, and in this case, 10,000. So it's rounding up whatever the maximum value is, which is about 124,000, I think, in that range. It's rounding that up to the nearest 10,000 above that. Okay, which is 130,000. And that's the value that pops in here, basically. The reason is I want this to be above the line. So whatever number is on this line, I want to be above that for my dotted line. Okay, so that's the structure, that's the formulas. Here's how we create the chart. Now, what I'm going to do is select the months first. So A1 down to A13. So I select that as per normal. And then I hold my control key down and I select D1 down to E13. So I'm missing out the bit in the middle. So I'll do it again. Select the first range A1 down to A13. Hold the control key down and then select D1 down to E13. So that's the range that I want to use for the chart. Insert. I'm going to use a line chart. I'm going to use the very first line chart. So there. So as you can see, it's pretty similar, but what you can't see, and I'll see how good my mouse skills are, see if I can click it. Somewhere here is the dot. Oh, it's going to be up here somewhere. Oh, got it. That's the dot. Let's go back. This is what's in the notes. Let's go back to there. So that's going to put the dot here. There it is. So that's the single 130,000 that's posted or plotted on this chart. Now that can be hard to select. So I'll show you how to do that easily. So what we're going to do, we're just going to format, just right click, format, whatever you format, the chart area, anywhere on the chart. That opens up this task pane on the right hand side. This is the easy way. If you're trying to select something and it's really hard, what you can do is click the drop down here. So series options, I've got drop down, and that's what I want, series actuals forecast. So now that I've selected it, what I want to do is I want to add something to it. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to while it's selected actually, go to the little plus sign and choose error bars. Okay, error bars are something that hardly anyone uses on charts, but they have a lot of options that are useful. And in this case, we're going to see what they are. Now that you've ticked that little box when that was selected, we can go back to our drop down and let's try that again. It should be, I should have error bars. So now that I've done that, the series actuals forecast error bars. So click that. Now, a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to click on this last little icon here. We're going to make what's called a minus error bar. So that means it's going to go down to the axis. We're going to tell it that it's a 100%. So there's the line. I'm going to say no cap. What that means is there's no icon or no line, basically. So no cap. So they're the settings for that one. And then I'm going to click on the color, so the paint can, and I'm going to change the width to maybe 1.5. That makes it a little bit thicker. And then I'm just going to change it to a dash type. And that's it. So that's the line. At the moment, we don't know what that line does. So what we're going to do is we're going to click back on the drop down and choose actuals forecast. Click on the little plus sign and choose, no, that's not there. Now this one can be a bit fiddly, so wish me luck. I'm going to right click it. No, that didn't work. Let's try it again. It said this one's fiddly, and I've also got a large mouse icon, so I think that makes it harder. Let's try that. No, what I'm after is I want to add the data labels to it. Oh yeah, there it is. So sorry, the data labels are there. There we go. So data labels. So I was on that one, use the plus and choose data labels. You can right click, but I said right clicking can be problematic if you're just trying to pick a point. Okay, so data labels, click on that now. Now, in case you didn't know, charts are made up of objects or elements, and every single element on the chart can be formatted. So a chart is not a single thing. It's actually made up of a whole lot of different things. I've done quite a few webinars on charts, so you can check those out. But what I'm going to do now is, now that that's selected, I'm going to go over here to that last icon, select label options. I don't want the value, and I don't want that. I want the series name, and I want the above, which it is at the moment. So that's all good. That's it. So we have finished. Two things to finish off. I'm not a fan of grid lines, so I'm going to delete that. Delete those. Click on them, hit the delete key on your keyboard. Done. I don't need the legend because I'm going to put the sales in the title, so I can get rid of that. And I'm going to click the title. I'll just move it over here. Click in the formula bar. Type the equal sign in the formula bar when you've got the chart title selected. And I'm just going to click on sales, the D1 there. That's it. Hit enter. So sales will pop up there. Again, whatever you put in that cell now, you're linking it. So you can say sales forecast if you wanted, or actuals forecast. And spell it right. Okay, so that's dynamic. So as you change what's in the cell, the chart title will update as well. So that can be handy to do dynamic chart titles. That's it. So now if I go and copy this, paste it in here, then it automatically moves. One thing I will show you that you might not be aware of, you may notice I've got this little vertical line in the cell to break up actuals and forecast. What you can do there is use the pipe character. Now, the pipe character is above the enter key. It's the vertical straight vertical line. You need to use the shift key to do it. That's it there. And it does allow you to basically put a break, if you like, or a line between words. I've used that here to separate actuals forecast. It almost lines up with the line. I think I could get it to line up if I put another space here. No, it's not going to do it. It's pretty much there. So yeah, so actuals forecast, and that line moves across. Okay, cool. Someone's asked, can you do a vertical line on a bar chart or column chart? Ooh, good question. I think let's try converting this to you can change the chart type. I have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. So let's change this. I think on a column we can. So if I change this to a column chart, okay, that's the column chart. So that works. Fingers crossed. Let's see what it does. I don't think this is going to work for a bar chart, but let's give it a go. So change chart series, and we're going to go for, ooh, okay, it's looking good. Cool. Okay. Yeah. No, I had no idea that was going to work, but that does seem to work. I don't know that that makes sense for what we're doing. But if you wanted to put like a vertical line that represented something on this bar chart, then that might be useful. But I'm not sure what that's actually saying on this one. So, because that's sort of, that vertical line there is linked to the 130. So that's linked to the left axis, whereas these are all going across and they're linked to the top axis. So this is what this is doing, is identifying October, basically. So even though it's got the value, if I take that out, I don't know what will happen. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, because really that's January, February, and that's not showing up there at all. So I'm not sure if that's useful or not, but it did work with the column. I'm not sure that it's great with the bar chart, because you don't really know what these bars mean. Like there's no month here. So yeah, I don't know that it's great for the bar chart. Okay, let's have a look now. Oh, actually, I'll put this back. I'll go back in time. There we go. And put that in. I will copy it down. To copy, by the way, you can just drag with the control key. I will change that back to the column, so you can. There's an example of that there. Okay, so that may be useful. Okay, we'll finish off with goal seek. Could be used as a benchmark. Yes, that's right. That's could be a useful technique. Okay, what we've got here, and this came up in a webinar that I ran, and someone said, is there a formula for an interest-free period on a loan? Now, I couldn't find one. I tried to create a formula. I got close, but I never got it to zero, as in clearing the loan. And then I thought, goal seek. Now, goal seek is a really simple idea in Excel. And then I thought maybe I could automate it. So let's go through the process. So here we've got a loan. Okay, so how many months interest-free period? So it's 12 months interest-free, and then we've got an interest rate. What we need is a single repayment amount that is going to repay the loan. So obviously in that first year, it's all of the repayment is going off against the loan because there's no interest. And then that same payment must then clear the last part of the loan. Now, if you're good at formulas, if you're better, you might be able to work this out and figure it out. I couldn't, so I thought let's use goal seek to do it. So here we go. So the formulas down the bottom here are all ready to go. As an example, if I put in $1,500, it's got to be minus 2, by the way. Okay, that's overpaid. So I've actually paid too much. Let's say $1,200. Getting closer, $1,100. Funnily enough, this is what goal seek does. it goes through and puts different values in there. So you can see $1,100 is pretty close. That's nearly paid it off. But let's get GoalSeek to do the work for us. So here we go. I'm going to click on this cell. So E6 is my goal cell. So click on that, click on data. And now you may have done my what if session last month. Was it last month? Might have been the month before. I lose track. And we used GoalSeek. So here we go. Click the drop down for what if, and we want GoalSeek. So my set cell is E6. That's the cell that I want to get the goal with. My goal is 0. Okay. And I want to change a particular cell, which in this case is B5. So E6 is the cell that's my goal. The goal that I want to get to is 0. So I want the closing balance to be 0 on my loan. And I want to change the estimated repayment. So here we go, drum roll. Okay, so it found a result. The target was 0. It's actually got to 0. It's showing that it's just over $1,100 that we need to use. And so we can click OK. Now, when you click OK, you can undo it. Okay, so if I said, oh, let's start again, you can undo it. You can also redo it. So yeah, just be aware that the undo and the redo works for GoalSeek. Okay, so that was what I thought. That's a solution. That's how you can do it. But if I change something, so with interest rates rising, if that goes to 6%, I then need to redo that. It's not automated. And here's the problem. When you try and use it again, it doesn't remember what you had. That's one of the frustrations with GoalSeek. It just forgets. You have to start again. The only reasons it's got E6 is because that was the cell that I was on. It's forgotten the 0 and it's forgotten the cell that I want to change. So that means each time I've got to go through and change it and then click OK. It finds a result. That's okay. That's not the problem. The problem is it's a manual process. So then I thought, oh, well, maybe I can automate it with a macro. So let's do that. So I'm going to delete that and I'm going to record a macro. So here we go. To record a macro, if you go to View, click the drop down and select Record Macro. Okay, so View on the end, macros, click the drop down and Record Macro. So I'm just going to call this New GoalSeek. You can call it whatever you want. You can't have a space. That's why I've got the underscore character. I'm going to save it into this workbook and click OK. So whatever I do now, Excel is watching. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to click on E6, data. I'm just going to exactly do what I've done before. GoalSeek. The value is 0 and the cell that I want to change is B5 and click OK. There's our result. Click OK. Now down the bottom here, or you can go, I think you can go back to View, click the drop down and stop recording. So you can use that. Or down the bottom, there's also a little square box that you might want to use. But okay, so I've stopped recording. When you are recording a macro, just make sure you stop recording because it will keep recording dutifully if you forget to stop it. So we've stopped it. So that's all good. So let's see if we can run it now. Okay, so to run the macro, you can click View Macros. I had one called GoalSeek in here already. That's why I called it New GoalSeek. And I'm going to run it. So that's the macro, run. And as you can see, it's almost instantaneous when it runs. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to run it off a button. So under Insert, you can use a shape or you can use an icon. Icons are a new thing. I'm going to use an icon. Let's look for an icon. I don't know. Do we have loans? Okay, so there's money changing hands. Let's use that one. Okay, so there's a little icon for money changing hands. So let's right click that and choose Assign Macro. New goal seek was the one I did. Click OK. So now we're down to, let's make this 7%. Interest rates are still going up. Oh, not 700, 7%. Okay, so you can see we're not quite there, but all I need to do now is click my little icon and it fixed it. So you can use the macro, you can run the macro off a button. So in this case, that speeds things up. I wanted to go even further and automate the process. So here we go. I'm going to delete that. And what we can do now, I'm going to go, this is just showing you how it's done. It's not meant to teach you how to do all of this, but I'm just going to show you how it's done. We can, before we do, I wanted to show you something that we should do. Let's go and look at the code. So hold the Alt key down and press F11, function key F11. This is the VBA screen. So I'll make it a bit smaller so we can sort of see Excel in the background there as well. So this is the code that I did. Now I'll give you a hint. You don't need any of this code. So you can delete that. This one line does all of our goal seek. So it's really easy to code. Now, here's the issue. When you record a macro, it captures the cell references. These do not update. So that means if I inserted a row at the top, it's going to refer to the wrong cells. So here's how we fix that problem. Let's cut that down. I'm going to give these two cells a name. So this cell I'm going to call balance. So E6. This is called the name box up in the corner here. I'm just going to call that balance. Hit enter. I always use a capital for the start of my range names. So that's a range name. So I've called that cell a name. This is going to be repayment. So B5, repayment. So those cells, those two cells are now named. When you click the drop down, you can see the names here. You can actually use them in formulas, but that's a whole nother topic. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go back to my macro and I'm going to change E6 into balance. Make sure I spell it right. Now, when you use range names take into account any and repayment. So now this is pretty bulletproof. The only thing that would stop this is if we say deleted the row that these were on or something like that. So let's just make sure it's still working. Let's press the button. That's all good. Now let's automate it. So we're going to go back into that Alt F11 screen. I'm going to copy this. Well, actually, it's actually already there. So if we go to this, so interest-free loan, if you double click that there is the macro that I prepared earlier. This is called a worksheet change event. So when you click up here, there's a worksheet option. When you do that, there's all of these events. Now, I'm not going to go into what all of these mean, but when you use change, anything that gets changed, like a value, triggers this macro to run. So what happens is when I change a value on the sheet, it's going to run this macro every single time. So now when I change that back, let's say interest rates keep going up and I say 8%, when I hit enter, it automatically happens. Okay, so I don't have to do anything, which is what I usually try and aim for. So 5%, that was the one we started with. So there you can see that's updated. So as soon as you change a value, so for example, if I change this month's, well, let's say I double the amount. Okay, you can see that automatically updates. We might need to widen that a bit, but okay, so it's sort of like auto-calculating it. Oh, that's right. It doesn't say anything there when it's all good. That's cool. And it's actually, I think, I don't think I can actually enter anything in this cell, because when I change that, the macro runs and it overwrites whatever I've put in there. Okay, so there you go. Now, macros. I've got my standard macro warning here. When you run a macro, you cannot undo anything because the macro clears the undo list. So even though you might have done something before you ran the macro, when you run a macro, you can't undo anything before you ran the macro. So just that's something you need to be aware of when it comes to macros. It's probably the only downside of macros. So you just need to be a bit careful when you are running them if you do want to undo something. So typically what you do is you save the file, then you run your macro. If everything's good, no problems. If something's gone wrong, just close the file and leave and without saving. And that can sort of put you back to at least pre the macro running. But in this case, it's not a big deal because we're only changing one cell on the whole sheet. So not too big a deal. Okay. So that is the macro. That's GoalSeek automated. So it basically updates automatically for you. We looked at days and dates as well as our little vertical line on our line chart, which we found we can put a vertical line on a column chart as well. So, yeah, hope you found that useful. I haven't had, what does the months represent in this sheet? But basically you need some sort of period to run. So I think 60 is the most. So that's like 5 years. I've actually got a sequence creating that. So that's going all the way down there. That's automated as well. So you can see that this one's automated. The other ones are just the normal formulas. So I've got a max of 60 just because I thought you probably wouldn't get an interest-free period on a loan that's over 5 years. But that's sort of the way that 12, that's the interest-free months, the first 12 months. So if you change that to 6, you can see there's no interest there. Okay, so I might wrap it up there. I don't think I've had any questions or any other questions. So thanks for attending. I hope you've enjoyed if you've been coming to the webinars during the year, I hope you've enjoyed them. I'll let you know when it'll probably be late January that I'll be starting up again. And then going through, I'll be doing budgets in February. So keep an eye out for that. I've got a new budget session that I've created. So that's going to be coming out in February. As I mentioned, when you're leaving, if you could fill out the feedback form, that would be appreciated. And if you've got any comments, just leave them there as well. And yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody and have a safe new year and hopefully see you on the other side. So thanks very much.